up here is what I looked like 20 years ago. I owned a spa. I had 35 employees, and there was constant turnover, especially at my front desk. And I was like, oh my God, there's got to be a better way to hire. And I had come from a background where I was taught how to do search committees, how to hire people effectively. And I'm like, how can I apply this to my business? At that point, I was just focusing on my immediate need. So I kind of took myself back to school, so to speak. And I tried a lot of trial and error. I looked to see what were the best practices for hiring. I went back to what I learned when I went through training on how to hire. And as you can see, kind of like with this slide, I tried out lots of different things until I got a bunch of processes and programs that actually worked. And to the point where some of my other franchisees and other business owners I knew were asking me, can you do this for me? What are you doing? I need help with hiring. And that's where my business, this one, actually started to come alive. And later, I sold my spa and focused on this full time. So for the last 15 years, I've been helping businesses to source, to attract, to develop their team, to help them build what we call their dream team, so that they not only can find these people and attract them, but keep them longer as well. So that is some of what we're going to be talking about today. And here's why this talk matters. And I think you probably know this already. Turnover is expensive and it's hard. It's hard on the business owner. It's hard on the manager. You're having to jump in to do things that normally aren't your role. And it takes a piece of you. And one of the things years ago, I had a client who owned a spa type business, and she was just near tears. And she just was always having to jump in at her front desk, and she didn't have a lot of help. And she had constant turnover. And we went in and helped her to build a way to attract the right people and how to recognize who the right people were. And she came to me and she said, Andrea, I was ready to just close down, and you have now helped me to fall back in love with my business. So that sort of became my passion, my motive, my reason for doing what we do, because I want business owners and hiring managers to be able to focus on building their business and enjoy what they're doing and not have to constantly be worrying about filling their team with good people. So over the years, I built more and more into my hiring system. And it became what we call the dream framework. And it actually worked out really well because our tagline always was, we help you build your dream team. But then our 5 stages that we take all of our clients through actually match perfectly to the DREAM. Now, we don't have time today to dive into all 5 of them. But we will be touching on about 3 of them today, and then I'll mention a few. Oh, I'm so glad I see you guys taking some screenshots. I want to encourage that because we also will be going over a couple of very simple AI techniques and prompts in a little bit. So please feel free to take pictures of the screen and let me know if you want me to go back to something. Okay, so D, let's dive into D. That is the first stage in the dream framework. And this is, I feel, the most important. It's the define stage. This is where you are putting time and work, especially if you're working with us, where we do a discovery process with you to learn who would be successful, not only in your company, with your culture, but also in whatever particular role that you need to fill. So we're talking about what outcomes are you looking for? who has been successful in the past and what behaviors have you observed? What success traits have you observed from those people who have been successful? Who hasn't been successful and what have you noticed about them? We're big on storytelling, so we typically will ask you to tell a lot of stories, and that's how we pull this information out of you, but you can do it yourself as well. You know, if you start to ask yourself these questions. So here's some things, I think we already went over there, but the other thing I haven't mentioned is, why do your team members even stay with you and why do they leave? If you really understand that, that is also going to help you as you start to attract your employees and work on keeping them. Now, here's one of those prompts I was talking about. So we use AI in two ways. We very often will use AI as a strategic partner. It helps us in taking data from our clients when we are interviewing them, when we are doing this discovery session with them, and taking that information, and the AI helps us to organize it in the way we need to organize it. And then it also helps us with sourcing candidates and finding new ways to find candidates that we're looking for. So we're going to be going over some prompts today that shows you how you can use it as a strategic partner. Now, this prompt is great at the define stage, where you're essentially asking an AI. We use ChatGPT for this one, but you're asking it to interview you. This is one of the best ways. If you haven't used AI a lot, or even if you have, stop asking it questions. Tell it to start asking you questions, and that will help you in the define stage. Tell it who it is. Tell it it's an expert talent consultant. And if you take I'm not going to read this whole prompt here, but if you take a screenshot of it, you'll get a good feel for what is in the prompt to help bring this information out. You want me to hold on? Okay. Now here's some prompts that I just love. The more you can teach the LLM, the AI, about your company, about your core values, and the role that you have, then you can start asking it, well, what would be some good outcomes I should expect from the person in this role within the first 60 days or the first 90 days? And see if it's right. Because this is more of, let's see what it comes up with, and it might match with what you're looking for. It might give you something that you never thought of, but you think it's a good idea for your company. But one of the biggest mistakes I see employers make is they go out, start recruiting, but they kind of know what they need, but they haven't clearly defined the outcomes they're looking for from that employee. And if the employee doesn't have really good expectation setting in the beginning of what makes them successful, how am I going to be successful in 30 days? How will I know that? How will I be successful in 60 and 90 days? Then you're really not setting your new team member up for success. So we like to use AI to help us define that if our client isn't clear on it. Again, it's a strategic partner. Now, this will also talks about observable behaviors. So sometimes we don't think about, well, how do we know somebody is successful? So you may say, oh, you're thinking of, Sandra, who is a great employee. They're getting the results you need. But what does Sandra do that really makes her successful? So the more stories you can feed the AI, it can start to pull that out. But even if you don't have those stories, you can feed it your job description and as much information as you have and say, can you give me 5 observable behaviors of a successful person in this role that I might, want to look for? And what are 5 bad behaviors that I don't want to see? So it really can be used as a partner in making these determinations. Now, these are all things you want to do before you go out and start recruiting people, because you want to get very clear on these so you can attract the right people and recognize them when you see them. We already talked about outcomes, but this is very simple prompt. As long as you already fed information into the chat where it understands your core values, it understands the role, what you're looking for, you can ask it, well, what are some outcomes I should be looking for? So that was just touching on define, the D in the DRAIN framework. Now we're on the R, reach. A lot of people fall down here and they think reaching the candidates is just taking a job posting that they threw together and putting it on Indeed, on LinkedIn, on all the different job boards, and it's going to attract. Well, you may get a couple of hundred applications, but I know I hear over and over again that our clients say, well, I don't have time to go through all these applications, and most of them that we're seeing are not what we're looking for. So now that you've gotten so clear in the define stage of what you're looking for, you can design materials from the job posting to other types of marketing to attract, to speak to that ideal persona, that ideal candidate. And that's what the reach stage is all about. And AI can help a lot with that. If you're feeding it what you learned in the define stage, then it can start to create recruitment marketing materials for you that are much clearer and that attract who you want. One of our things that we've been doing a long time, before AI was so popular and open to everybody, is we have a high converting formula for our job postings. Clients come to us often just for our help with doing job postings. Now, I'm going to give you access to a custom GPT that I created that's based on our formula, because you probably can't get the full prompt here on this screen. But one of the things I want to point out is we always start with about 4 or 5 engaging questions. And we typically write these questions last, because we want these questions to incorporate the most important aspects from what you're looking for and what would attract the right person. And, we used to have copywriters that did this for us, and we found that we could train an AI. Claude is actually one of the best in doing marketing materials and job postings. We found we could train it on our formula, put our clients' information in it, and get a job posting that's 90% there, and then we usually refine it to make it 100% there. But job postings are important. I'm not saying this because I want you to just go out to the job boards, because yeah, we are going to cover job boards. It's always going to be there, but we prefer sourcing, right? And bringing in passive candidates. But you still need some sort of marketing piece that you share with these passive candidates that speak to exactly who you're looking for. And a job posting can be one of those pieces. Plus, we find when we're ready to develop the interview questions, if we did a very thorough job on the define stage and the job posting, it makes it easier to develop interview questions that are asking what we need to learn and evaluate candidates. So this is just another prompt that once you feed it all the information about you, you can say, can you make 5 social media posts that incorporate my mission, incorporate my core values, really speaks to that part of my business, that's promoting who we are and that we need people to join our company. And then do a social media campaign. It's one of the best ways to start to fill your talent pipeline. Even if you're not hiring right now, do social media campaigns around who you are, what you're doing. Did you get an honor? Did your CEO write an article about something that might be of interest? to people who later would want to join your company. You want to be building that pipeline all the time. Just like you hear people say, always be selling, I always say, always be recruiting. Here's a candidate outreach prompt. So again, you want to be sourcing passive candidates. There's so many ways to do this. It's very easy on LinkedIn, but if your candidates don't hang out on LinkedIn and they hang out on Instagram or Facebook or other social medias, there are ways to scrape those sites as well and reach out to people there. But you want to reach out to them in a way that they find gold from it, that they find it interesting, they're learning something, they appreciate something that you're giving to them. And then when you reach out to them about a job, they're much more interested. So I just want to pause here to show you the whole framework again. We've already gone through D and R. Engage, we're not going to dig too much into, but we do use a lot of automation and AI in Engage. So Engage is where you can automate and make it easier to track your candidates, to reach out to them, and to build these talent pipelines that I've been talking about so that you're not starting from scratch. Assess is where we're going to go next, because I get so many questions about how to interview. I hear these stories all the time. Maybe some of you can resonate with this, where you do an interview, you feel like the candidate is just perfect for your team and can do the job, and then they show up to work, and maybe within an hour, maybe within a week, you say, are you the same person I interviewed? Because I can see, when I mention this, I see a lot of those heads going up and down in the audience when I say that. And it's happened to me lots of times. But I learned new techniques for interviewing, and it does take a little bit of practice, but I'm going to go through it, a very simple formula with you today. And you can get AI to help you with it as well. That if you follow it to the letter, you're going to be amazed at the different types of responses you get from candidates and being able to tell who is a better fit than the more maybe traditional way of interviewing. Oh, I did want to mention here, chatbots. If you're not using chatbots, that is a really great way, if you're always hiring, that you have a 24/7 person to answer questions for candidates. And that can be a great way to engage them while you're not even on the clock. Okay, so when you're doing interview questions, I'm going to walk you through. We start most of our interview questions with, could you share? Now, I know it sounds, but what's so special about that? When I was taught to interview decades ago, a lot of the interviewing started with tell me or show me, or, a very directional, very do this, right? And it was almost like you thought there was a spotlight on you, because you're on, that you're being interrogated. If you want a true response from candidates, you want to make them feel comfortable. You want to make them feel like they're in a conversation with you. And the more comfortable they get, the less their defenses will be up. And you'd be amazed at some of the things I hear from candidates. So that you get to know them a lot better. The polish they're used to putting on starts to fall off a little bit, which is good because you want to know who they truly are. So we always start most of our questions with, could you share? Because it makes them feel like they have a choice if they want to answer, and it sounds more conversational. Now the next part is key. Could you share a specific example? Everybody write that down or take a picture of it. That is your power phrase. You want to know specific examples of past behavior. Now, I know a lot of you have probably heard about behavioral-based questions. This is even deeper than that. You want to push for those specific examples, but you want to make it a challenge. So I don't want you to ask, could you give me a specific example of when you wowed a client? Anybody can come up with that. I don't care. I want to know a specific example of a time you had a very difficult client. And just leave it at that. Don't ask them how they resolved the situation. Just see what they have to say. The candidates that are probably going to be the best ones for you are going to share what happened, and they're either going to share that they did resolve it and walk you through that, or they're going to tell you what they learned from it and how it's changed their behavior going forward. Sometimes I actually want to hear that they failed, but that they changed, it helped them in the future. So the more you can practice that and ask questions like that, now you need to also follow up with, well, what happened next? I want to know the specific details. I always say to candidates, I love stories. I say that to my clients as well. The more stories I can get, whether they're candidates or clients, the better information I get. So to make them feel comfortable, I'm like, well, I'm looking for a story, because what you're going to hear often is, well, we did this, or, you typically want to do such and such to make a client happy. So what I would usually say, especially if they're saying we a lot, because we are taught to say we as a team, so I want to give them an opportunity. So I typically say, I think it's great that you're using we, and that you're talking about how you did something productive as a team. And we approach things like that. We're a team here as well. But I do want to give you permission to say I, because this is an interview. And I want to learn about the specific actions that you individually took. Now, sometimes you may want to be asking about situations within a team, but you also want to key in on their specific actions. And they usually will laugh and just smile and say, thank you for telling me that, because I never know. And you get much better answers. Now, if they tend to keep giving you hypotheticals where they're just saying, well, you should do this, and I usually give them about 2 chances of saying, I'm really looking for very specific examples from your past, experiences. And if they continue to not give you specific examples, then I wouldn't push it anymore and probably end the interview, because that tells me a couple of things. Maybe they don't have the experience to give you the details, or they're terrible listeners. And either way, they probably aren't right for my role. So here's a prompt for you. You can take a screenshot. Here it's asking it to use the formula that we were talking about just now to create the interview questions. So if you have a specific formula that you use to interview, or you want to use the one I just shared with you, train a GPT to do it, and then tell the GPT about the role, about your core values, and it can help you to create some of these questions. Of course, still review everything to determine if this is what you want, but we usually get it pretty close to what we're looking for. Anybody need me to hold it before I? No? Okay. Again, if you need to create an interview rubrics. So if you're using the same screen with the chat, and it knows all about your culture, it knows all about your role, it can then start to create these tools for you. The key is to make sure you're training it exactly on the information you want it to know. And now, when we started doing this, you couldn't even search the web with a lot of the LLMs. Now you can put your URL in there, and it can pull so much information from it already. Here's a scorecard prompt. Just I'll let you take a picture and then I'm going to keep going. Now we have a free Dream Hire assessment. If you go to the QR code, it's actually going to take you to our website, but there's a button on it as soon as you go to the homepage that says Dream Assessment. It takes about 5 minutes to complete. I'll get out of your way here. It takes about 5 minutes to complete. And it's going to ask you about 4 questions for each of the 5 stages. You can just pick it. It's like multiple choice. You hit the radio button, very quick. And at the end, it's going to give you a pretty cool roadmap for each of the 5 stages of what it recommends would be a good focus for you to improve your hiring process. So it's free. I welcome you to take a look and try it out. I also put a link there, meetwithaha.com, if you would like to do a free 15-minute consultation with me. That's my calendar link. It goes right to my calendar link. We also have a booth all the way on that side if you walk straight back. And you can come by, and I'll be here until the end of the expo today at I think it ends at 4 o'clock. We also have a free job posting wizard that I mentioned earlier. So if you go to jobpostingwizard.com, it's going to take you to ChatGPT. So if you already have a ChatGPT account, it can be free. It doesn't have to be a paid version. It will take you to the custom GPT for the job posting wizard. It's going to ask you a lot of the questions that we talked about during the define stage, and then it will create a pretty good job posting for you if you take the time to answer the questions. So I highly recommend doing that. Now, I typically like to start to end my talks with this quote from Simon Sinek. It's one of my favorites, and it really represents everything that we do at AHA. If you hire people just because they can do the job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they'll work for you with blood, sweat, and tears. And this quote drives me in everything that we do. And I hope that what we talked about today, I hope that you saw the theme of really going into your heart of what your company is all about, the culture, and who is successful there, so that you can use that to attract and recognize who is the best fit for your company. We didn't talk about the M of dream, but that's motivate. How do you engage them? How do you onboard them, but then keep them motivated and engaged? And that's important as well. And we help companies with that too. And we always bring it back to the core values. If you have the core values right and keep them alive, it just is a theme aligned throughout your company. So this is me. You're welcome to email me. Definitely, if you liked anything I had to say, please reach out on LinkedIn, connect with me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You'll find a newsletter I put out every Wednesday for free, and it digs into a lot of what we talked about today in more detail. But thank you so much for coming today. And if you have any questions, I'm here. I'm not sure how we did go a little bit over, so thank you.